My name's Leigh, everybody. I'm from Advantage Legal, as Peter has mentioned. We are a rehabilitation-focused personal injury law firm. It's probably not something that you've heard too often, but it is something that we are very passionate about. We certainly service the whole of New South Wales, but we're based here in Sydney. We are the exclusive compensation law firm of Bicycle in New South Wales, but we're also quite vocal advocates for the improvement of road safety conditions for cyclists around New South Wales as a whole. So you'll see us out and about, certainly championing for change and certainly assisting Bicycle New South Wales with their cause. Our principal solicitors, of which I'm one, are accredited specialists in personal injury law. We have quite a breadth of experience working for plaintiff law firms, defendant law firms, insurance companies, and also New South Wales tribunals. So we're pretty across this space. We like to think that we certainly have enough knowledge and experience to be able to do these kinds of seminars and certainly help people out with their cases when they're in trouble. So we understand, most importantly, though, that when injured people are in an accident, it places a tremendous amount of stress on an injured person and their family. So we always try to ensure that our advice is clear, practical, and outcome-based. So again, sometimes different to other personal injury you might experience with other personal injury law firms, but that's our approach. Just as a general disclaimer about this evening, what we're discussing today really relates to the New South Wales Motor Accident Compensation Scheme. I should, just because it is being recorded, illustrate that different states and territories do have different legislation and different road rules that apply. So there might also be conflicting or additional compensation rights that you might have to be aware of coming out of the same accident. And so, for example, if you're in the course of your employment and hit by a car, resulting in a work injury, but you also have compensation rights. Depending how injured you are, you may also have TPD rights. So just keep in mind that sometimes there are overlapping, sometimes conflicting, but also mutually beneficial. So it's always worthwhile if you get yourself into trouble to always have a chat with a lawyer. With us, the initial consult's free anyway, so literally all it costs is your time. So whilst we're discussing things generally today, so again, today really needs to be understood to be educational in nature. Please don't take what we're saying here to be legal advice because every circumstance is different. So, again, if you need to speak to somebody about, your personal circumstances, please reach out to us. We really just are doing this today to help out the cycling community and the members of Bicycle in New South Wales. So generally speaking, we'll take you through as much as we can based on general information, and we'll if it gets into too much legal depth, we can take it offline and I can have a chat to people afterwards about your personal circumstances. Thanks, Peter.
Thanks very much, Leigh. Well, we are going to get into the questions now. We've got a number of questions to ask Leigh, and afterwards there is going to be a little bit of time for some other questions from the audience. We do have a couple of pre-submitted ones, but certainly if you've got a burning question, you're able to put it in the chat icon at the bottom of your Zoom link, and that we will try and ask that if time permits later on this evening. But to begin with, Leigh, in the unfortunate case of a bicycle accident, and perhaps someone might be hit by a car whilst riding their bicycle on the street and you're injured, what's the first thing that you need to do in the immediate aftermath of an accident?
Well, assuming you're conscious, which is not always an assumption that can be made, getting out of harm's way is always first and foremost the most practical and important thing. Just because you've been hit by one car doesn't mean that you can't be hit by another. So literally getting out of harm's way, forget about your bike, just get out of harm's way. Then once you're sort of in a situation where you're avoiding any further accident, either get someone to call 000 or you call 000 if you're in a state to do so. More than likely, you're going to need an ambulance, but depending on the circumstances, you may need the police as well. So again, I usually recommend people call the police, because in the event of a serious injury, you're going to need to file a claim at a later date, and you need an event number. And so the police will actually issue you with that event number if they come to the scene and have actually witnessed the severity of the accident. Should note, a lot of people do have concerns about if an ambulance is called and I'm only treated, or if I'm taken to hospital, I'm liable for the cost of the ambulance, and it can be, you know, $400 or $500. If you actually proceed to lodge a claim, all of those costs are covered. So if you're a claim for CTP, if you've been hit by a car in New South Wales, even if you're at fault, you can lodge an at-fault claim. So those costs are covered. So you really should. There's no reason why you should not call an ambulance. Okay, unless you were doing something illegal in the context of your writing, which is pretty hard to imagine. But like, I'm talking like a serious crime, then always call an ambulance. So there's really, it'd be a very remote circumstance where calling an ambulance would be a bad idea. When you're sort of in a situation where you're conscious and you sort of, you're able to understand what's going on, if you can't physically take photographs, get somebody to take as many possible photographs of the accident scene, of the surroundings, of the car that's hit you, the registration plate, your bicycle, the damage that's caused. Take photos and videos of everything. The more contemporaneous records you have, the more likely that you'll be able to actually show damage and any issues regarding liability for the claim at a later date. So again, take as much of the surroundings and the actual accident scene as you possibly can. The more contemporaneous evidence, the better. Make sure you get the registration details of the car. You'd be surprised how many people rely upon the police to give them that information. It becomes a bit of a struggle sometimes to get that information off the police because of freedom of information. It is certainly you will get it, but it's just easier to make sure that you get as much information as possible from the actual scene. So registration plate, name and contact details of the driver, take details of the actual vehicle that hit you. All right. So if it was a Toyota Camry that hit you and silver one with registration 123 ABC, write all of that down. Get a photograph of the driver's license of the person. Don't let them leave the scene. There's no possible way that you can track them down if you don't have these details. All right. So you want to have the information as readily available as possible. Now, other important thing is to get witness details. All right. So if people saw the accident, again, don't assume that the police will give you that information, because a lot of the time it's hard to access it. So get that information. If you've got the name and contact and the mobile number of the person that witnessed the accident, that will help you at a later date if you need it. You may not need it, but it's always better to have it and not need it. Another big tip is look around and see, are there any surveillance cameras that were facing the accident scene? So you might see something that could have been on a dash cam from a car, a bank ATM, a service station that was nearby. Maybe there's some houses with private surveillance cameras on it. If you see any of them, again, assuming you're in a state to be able to go and get it, but if you can't, ask someone to go and get a copy of it for you, or point it out to the police that there's a surveillance camera over there. Would you mind going and getting a copy of it? All of that information is relevant for a period of time, and then those surveillance cameras will record over themselves, or it'll be deleted from a digital file after a certain period of time. So if you're admitted into hospital, there's no guarantee that you're going to get out of hospital in time to go and get it. So again, the more you can get, or the more you can direct from the actual accident scene, and again, I appreciate not everyone's going to be conscious and some people will be very severely injured, but the more you can get at the actual accident scene, the better. And if you're in a group of people and somebody's been injured in your group, this is for you to help out the person that's been injured. Okay, so keep that in mind. There's quite a lot that you can do to help at the accident scene. So look, overall, to summarize, get as much information, as much contemporaneous records. It doesn't have to be photographs. If you can get very clear video, that's just as good, because that information can be extracted from a video. Sometimes videos are better because they actually show the recordings of people. You can hear them saying things. You can see the state that people are in. A picture tells 1,000 words, but a video will tell it so many more. So look, accident scene, real-time evidence, you can't beat it. It creates clarity for an insurance company, because sometimes somebody will have a different version of events to your version of events. So you've got real-time evidence of what's going on. You have a much clearer picture, and you're the one that's injured. So you want to make sure that you've got as much information to prove your case to an insurance company as possible. That's about it,
Right.
Peter.
Yeah, thanks very much, Leigh. There's some really, really important tips there. And I particularly like your point around the how you can help others and use this information
Yeah.
for others. And I'm certainly forever indebted to a witness a number of years ago who helped me out in an accident I was involved in. And without her contribution and information she was able to provide, it wouldn't have been a successful claim, and it was really as clear cut as that. And I still remember her name, and I guess I'm forever in debt to her little bit of assistance, and always forever appreciative. And if we can ever repay that favour, it's a beautiful thing to do at the same time. Next question, though, does the accident have to be reported to the police?
So, look, under motor accident compensation law, if you're going to bring a case, there's a requirement to actually get an event number. So that incident has to be reported. The law requires a reporting to the police of 28 days, but the claim form requires an event number. And if you haven't actually got the event number from the accident scene, you need to either call the police assistance line. However, they will probably direct you back to a police station in order to actually give a report. So you're better just to try to, number one, get it from a police officer at the scene. If they've taken a report of injury, you tell them you're going to have to lodge a claim and that you need it. If you go into a police station, a lot of the time it's hard to get an event number when you're self-reporting. A lot of the time the police want there to be quite severe injuries, and you might get a little bit of resistance because there's a bit of paperwork involved. What you need to explain to the police is that an injury has occurred, irrespective of the severity of it. You're not pushing for a traffic infringement, or maybe you are, but you are doing this for the purpose of lodging a personal injury compensation claim, and it's required under that legislation. So if you explain that to the police, they will actually take it and give you an event number. If for some reason it fails, you need to take down the name of the police officer, the police station that you went to, and also the time and date that you tried to report it. That information can then be given to the insurance company. It can be given to your lawyer. And so if there is ever a dispute around, has there been an effective reporting to the police in the statutory timeframes, you can say, I tried. The police didn't want to do it. And unfortunately, look, the police have got a lot of priorities. They've got gun violence in Sydney, they've got drug abuse, they've got domestic violence. There's a whole heap of other nasty things that are going on that prioritize their time. So if they don't have time to do this, we need to be a little bit of understanding around it. But you still need to do something to make sure that you've covered off your legal requirements in order to lodge a claim. Failing to do this will invalidate a claim. The insurance company will want to know why you didn't do it and what attempt you made and all that kind of thing. So having all that information available to from the outset is important.
Yeah, thanks, Leigh. That's great. I was going to ask around the CTP claim and how does it actually get lodged? You've partly touched on that, but could you give us a bit more detail around that?
Yeah, look, so the first claim is called an application for personal injury benefits, and CTP is a little bit of a fickle beast these days. So you've actually got two claims that need to be lodged. The first claim is sort of in the immediate aftermath, and the second claim is limited to people with quite severe injuries, and that's where you sort of get a compensation payout. But in the first claim, you're getting access to treatment, potential home care if you need it, and coverage for your loss of wages. It's capped, but there's a period of time where there's step downs and things like that in it, but you've got essentially a period of cover under that regime. Now, there's a number of ways you can lodge it. So assuming that you know all the registration details and what have you, On the SIRA website, that's SIRA, the State Insurance Regulatory Authority, there is a claim form called the Application for Personal Injury Benefits. You can download that form. It needs to be accompanied with a medical certificate from your doctor. Again, there is a specific medical certificate that needs to be completed, and that's called a certificate of capacity. That needs to be lodged with that on the insurer who is at fault. Now, how do you know who the insurer is at fault is? Well, if you were lucky, they would have given it to you at the time of the accident. That's one of the details that you actually want that I didn't mention before. Sorry. So one of the you want to know who the CTP insurer is. Part of the problem is that people don't know who their CTP insurer is. They give you comprehensive car insurance details. They forget that there's another insurer involved in the registration process. So to find that out, you actually just go onto the Transport for New South Wales website, and there is like a rego check. So if you just Google New South Wales rego check, it'll come up. It's usually the first one. You put in the registration details, and it will actually tell you who the CTP insurer is. So with that detail, you can then lodge that claim form on the insurer. There's a couple other ways you can do it. You can lodge it directly through the SIRA website. They actually have an online form. Again, if you're having trouble getting that information about who the insurer is, you can actually call SIRA and give them the details about the accident, what's actually occurred, the registration details, and they will tell you who the insurer is because they oversee the CTP scheme. So you've got two ways of lodging the claim form and a few different ways on how to actually find out. Can I just caution though, the claim form is always filled in really, really badly by people who don't understand the dynamics of the CTP scheme. It can have a detrimental impact on how your claim is managed if you don't list all of the injuries, if you don't list all of your income, if you don't explain to the insurer, the exact circumstances of the accident, or if you're unsure, if you write something like, I'm unsure of who was at fault, well, that can have a detrimental impact on how your claim is going to be handled. So it is wise to speak to a lawyer beforehand. Again, it doesn't cost you anything to do it. It's not compulsory, though. I will make that very clear. You don't have to speak to a lawyer. Many people do this directly with an insurer. The insurers will try to guide you through it sometimes. But again, I just err on the side of caution and understand that the person that's paying you this money is not necessarily going to have the best interest in helping you complete a claim form. So it's sort of like, you're better to get some independence in that situation, fill in the claim form, get it done properly so that you're making sure that you're putting your best step forward. Because the smallest amount of detail in these claim forms really does make a difference. Sometimes the medical certificates haven't been completed properly by the doctors. And everybody assumes that because they're a doctor that they know what they're doing. Unfortunately, they don't. Nobody gets specific training on completing that claim form for the CTP scheme. Doctors have just learnt to do it over the years in their practice. Nobody's giving them feedback on whether they're doing it right. So again, it's really, you want sort of like a review before you put all that information in, because you want to make sure that the insurance company understands the severity of your injury, how much money you're losing, whether you need help at home, what treatment you need and why. Because again, just because you're submitting treatment request doesn't mean it's going to be approved. So again, giving the insurer the whole story is very important. So yeah, so just be very careful when you're submitting all of this stuff to make sure that you're actually doing it correctly.
Some important detail there to be cautious and aware of. You mentioned earlier that there's a 28-day limit on a CTP claim, Leigh, but what about some of the other time limits that need to be observed as well?
Yeah, so the 28-day time frame previously was to do with reporting to police, but in addition to that, there's actually a number of other time frames, and they sort of overlap a little bit. So I'll try to just sort of give you the starting points. So after 28 days, you start to lose some of your rights. So at the 28-day mark, you will not be back paid to the date of the accident unless you have an explanation as to why you haven't already lodged a claim form. So in other words, it is far easier for you to make sure that you lodge a claim form within 28 days. You can extend it up to 3 months, but you've got to give that explanation to the insurer. Now, after the 3 months, then it's just if you lodge it after that point in time, there's further loopholes and essentially, sorry, not loopholes, further processes that you need to go to in order to lodge the claim. And it just becomes a lot harder. If you haven't got a satisfactory explanation after these time limits expire, your claim can be refused. So the long and short of it is get it in within 28 days before things start going astray for you. You've then got 3 years to commence a damages claim. So I mentioned earlier that there are 2 claims. That second claim, if you've actually got the right to it, and I won't go into the detail of it today, but let's just assume if you're not at fault and you're severely injured, you've got potentially a right to that second claim. If you have that right, that has to be commenced in the Personal Injury Commission or court within 3 years. Now, the Personal Injury Commission is a tribunal. Most of the matters go through to that tribunal before we go off to court. There are certain matters that will go straight to court. But in order to protect timeframes to proceed to court, it's just easier for everybody to know 3 years, get it lodged, so that everything is protected. They're the main ones. There are others along the way, but they're sort of the drop-dead ones that people should be aware of.
Excellent.
Sorry, there is one that's sort of off to the side that I think people just in this forum should be aware of as well, Peter. So not necessarily in a motor accident compensation context, but if you were sort of hit or you've had a close pass or whatever, and you want to actually get a traffic infringement issued by the police, there are time limits on getting that done, and they start from 6 months. So after an event has occurred, if 6 months passes, it's sort of the more severe an accident, the longer time the police have got to actually do something about it. But if it's a minor offence, it's only 6 months. So if you're really pushing for a traffic infringement to be issued, make sure that you follow it up with the police directly within that 6-month time frame, or you might not be able to do it. Again, there's nothing you can do about it. You need to go to the police and see what they're doing about it. So if they're not going to do anything about it, they're going to let that time frame lapse, and that'll be the end of it.
Excellent. What about in terms of treatment? How do people go about obtaining treatment, and are they liable to pay for it?
So, well, first and foremost, you need to lodge a CTP claim. So that's the application for personal injury benefits. Now, once you lodge the claim, the CTP insurer is going to reimburse either you or the hospital and cover all of those direct, immediate after accident expenses. You don't need approval for that. That's just considered emergency treatment. It all gets covered, and so but you have to lodge that claim. You can't, if you don't lodge the claim, then you're personally liable for it. So lodge the claim first and foremost. Once you've lodged the claim, you've got a claim number. The insurance company then needs to actually pre-approve the treatment. So what you need to do is go to your GP and request. You need referrals for the treatment. So it might be physio, psychiatrist, surgeon, and like you name it, whatever it is, medication, whatever it is, you actually need to go and get that, get a referral for it, and get approval from the insurance company. Now, that could also include your travel expenses to and from places. So if you're going from a hospital to a doctor, to another doctor, back to home, all of that travel can be covered. But again, the insurance company best practice is to get those costs pre-approved by the insurer. Because, for example, if you've got a car and you're capable of driving it, they're not going to approve for you to go and rent a limo to go around town. So again, it's got to be, what is most practical in your circumstances. So, and there's sort of a test called reasonable and necessary, which is that's the legislative term, and it gets applied to the circumstances. It's subjective in your particular circumstances. So you're getting those referrals from your GP. The GP is also going to give you that certificate of capacity I mentioned earlier. So and they typically write within that if you need scans and what your capacity for work and things like that is. So all of that documentation needs to be given off to the insurer. The insurer's then got 10 days to approve it, and they've got 20 days to pay it. So again, there's some timeframes here. It doesn't just happen at the flip, the flip of a coin or a switch. And the important thing with it is that the insurer can say no. So if you go and incur that treatment, in that circumstance, if the insurer has said no, you're personally liable for it unless you get a lawyer or you go yourself off to the Personal Injury Commission and dispute it. Okay. Now, there is an internal review process with insurers. I should just probably flag that before you go off to the commission. Sorry, because it is a process that needs to be followed. But long and short of it is, you go to the doctor, you get the referral, you get the pre-approval, then you get the treatment. That's how it works.
Thanks for that. What about what happens if the car that hits the cyclist didn't stop after the accident and I can't identify the car? This has also come up as one of the questions in the chat, so we'll kill two birds with one stone.
Cool. So the CTP scheme does actually have this covered. So there's a process called the nominal defendant. Now, basically what that means is that you can't identify the driver or the vehicle that was involved in the collision. And so the insurance scheme will cover you, but you have to make some attempts at actually trying to locate the vehicle. So this could be, the process is called due inquiry and search under the legislation. So what you might be required to do, like the standard sort of expectation is that you would go door to door in the local area. So if it was out the front of shops, you'd go to the shops and door knock, or you go, if it's out the front of a residential area, you would go, go knock on the houses. You might be required to do a letterbox drop, put something into someone's letterbox saying, do you know anything about, this on a particular date at time? You'd be expected to speak to the police to see if anyone has reported it as a witness. And look, if you get a law firm involved, law firms will typically advertise in a local newspaper as well. They might post things on Facebook in the local area and have it geo-targeted. You've got to make an attempt in order to locate the vehicle. Now, when that fails, because quite often it does, because quite often it's all that someone might know is, oh, it was a white van that hit me, or it was a black Commodore that hit me, or it was a yellow BMW that hit me. You don't have any other information. Now, if that's the case, the nominal defendant scheme, you would then lodge a claim through CIRA, and CIRA will allocate it to one of the CTP insurers through the nominal defendant scheme, and it will be treated the same as any other claim from that point on. So, but it is a bit of a loading process at the beginning. I would say to you that if you do it alone without legal advice, you will go through a whole heap of hoops because you won't know the process, and it's going to take you a lot longer than what it would if you just went and got a lawyer to help you out. So again, in that particular circumstance, because of the complexity of the process, you really should seek legal advice. But that's it in a nutshell.
Excellent. In some cases, unfortunately, and rarely, the bicycle user might be at fault, Leigh. So how can they still claim compensation if they were indeed at fault?
So assuming there's a vehicle involved. So again, everything we're talking about today is, it's related to the CTP scheme. So assuming there's a vehicle involved, CTP actually covers you for 12 months of at-fault benefits. So you'll get your wages, your treatment, and your home care for up to 12 months. So if you are very seriously injured, I'm talking brain damage, amputations, that kind of thing, there's a secondary scheme which exists for a very minute few called the Lifetime Care and Support Scheme. And in that scheme, you will get lifetime care and support, as the name suggests. So But where people go wrong with all of this is that they assume that because they were at fault, they've got no benefits, or they openly turn around because somebody has screamed at them at the accident site, you were at fault, it's your fault, and all of a sudden it's the loudest voice in the room, so to speak. And they go, oh, I must be at fault because you're saying that I am, and therefore, they get overwhelmed by the situation, or they were knocked unconscious, and they assume I was at fault. Now, it's not always that clear cut. In law, we have a situation, a principle called contributory negligence. So you can be partially at fault. You can have partially breached the law. The driver can have partially breached the law. Now, if you've got partial entitlements, that's better than no entitlements. So again, being partially at fault may extend your benefits beyond 12 months. It may also give you the right to claim common law damages. So again, don't make the assumption that you're at fault. Always go and get advice on it, check it. The insurance company is not going to be, they're going to have their point of view on this. So you're going to need an independent view on this. All right. So there's no point in asking the insurance company, am I at fault? Because they're going to rely on their insured driver, because that's the version of events of the person that they insure. So, it's definitely worthwhile doing, speaking to someone about that. If you're a Bicycle New South Wales member, all right, and this is one of the benefits, if you get cut off the CTP scheme, you've then got the additional benefits that come under the Bicycle New South Wales insurance policy. So again, there's other benefits that are available to you by being a member. So again, it's not all about CTP. There are additional benefits that are available too. So just keep in mind, it's not always as clear cut across the board as what it seems.
Leigh, and what type of injuries are actually covered under the CTP?
So it's an interesting question. So the physical and psychological injuries are covered, and I think a lot of the time people fail to acknowledge the seriousness of a psychological injury. And like when I went back to when we were talking previously about the reporting to the police, when you have to report an injury to a police officer within 28 days, a psychological injury a lot of the time has not already manifested. A psychological injury can come as a result of poor recovery from the physical injury. It can also come from the pure trauma itself. So the horrific nature of an accident, seeing somebody injured, seeing somebody die in a car accident. These things all take time. They're not necessarily instant. I mean, sometimes they are, but sometimes they're not. So people quite often fail to acknowledge that a psychological injury can be as serious, if not more serious, than a physical injury. Physical injuries, a lot of the time, broken bones heal. And a lot of the time they do have lingering issues. But if your mental state is so bad from the accident that you can't concentrate, that you've lost the zest to live, it has a much bigger flow-on effect than the physical injury when you're trying to go to work, with your relationship with friends and family. So the psychological component of it can have a far bigger impact on you. So always keep in mind physical and psychological injuries. Just on the physical injury part, one of the other things and it'll always be a contentious issue, but there are what we call consequential injuries. So for example, if you have a knee replacement because of a bicycle accident, and as a consequence of that, you start weight bearing more onto your other leg, right? You might have an altered gait. So in other words, limping around, which then puts pressure onto your lower back. If you walk around like that for a period of 6 months or more, or you end up using a walking stick or a crutch, you end up in a situation where you have potentially got further injuries because your other knee might give way, your lower back sustains injuries. And if you've never had previous problems with these body parts, they become what is known as a consequential injury. So again, just because it didn't happen in the immediate aftermath of the accident does not mean it is not related to the accident. So always be aware there are flow-on effects. And this is why, getting every single injury down on the medical certificate as soon as it becomes relevant is very important. And again, you'll have a very hard time explaining that to an insurance company without the benefit of a legal advocate. You can try, but it will typically, even with a legal advocate, it will typically be disputed. That's not to say that it's not a valid injury. It's just that because of the period of time that has passed since the accident, there are different rules at law, and they tend to be disputed. So, but they're the main ones.
Excellent to know. Someone else asked this in the chat, but does the CTP cover my bicycle?
Unfortunately not. So we're dealing with bodily injury here. So the damage to your bike will come under the individual's, your own personal bicycle insurance if you've got it. Some house and contents policies have it. Or alternatively, if you're lucky, the drivers will have comprehensive car insurance, at which point you'd be able to claim it back from them. Short of those, unfortunately, you've got to actually go after the driver themselves, and you've got to obtain a quote for either the repair of the bike or the replacement of the bike. You have to issue a letter of demand, and you've got to ultimately commence court proceedings, usually in the local court. But it's sort of, you've got to actually go through court in order to recoup it. Typically, I'd say to you, it depends on the value of your bike, whether you go down that route or not. If you've got a low value bike, by the time you factor in legal fees and your time and the amount of effort that gets involved, it's quite a stressful process as well. Nobody likes going to court, even for minor, trying to reclaim minor amounts of money. So I'd say to you, practically weigh it up as to whether it's worth it. If you've got a $25,000 carbon fiber bike, yeah, by all means, let's chase that rabbit down the hole and get it sorted for you. But if you're looking at a cheaper bike, you've got to look at the commerciality of it all, whether it's actually worthwhile trying to chase them down. Sometimes a phone call and just explaining to them that, this was my only means of transport and I really need you to do it because it's going to impact my job. You're the one that hit me. Could you please replace my bike? Sometimes that's actually all that's needed. You don't need to threaten legal action. You don't have to go down this route. So always start, and again, assuming you got the contact details from back at the accident scene, always just start with a polite phone call. You'd be surprised how far it goes.
Right. And it's good to know there's always at least a couple of nice people out there as well. The prevention is always better than a cure. And what are some of the measures that bicycle users can take to avoid an accident in the first place in New South Wales?
I reckon you'll have a few on this topic, but from my point of view, a lot of accidents are due to poor visibility. So it's not necessarily, always, it could be weather, but sometimes it's just, the poor visibility of drivers. So do everything you can to be visible. And that's bright helmet, wear your helmet, highly visible clothing. If you've got electronic flashing lights that you can put on your bike, some helmets have got them, be visible. If you've got the reflective gear as well, that always helps. If weather is poor, you need to adjust to the circumstances. Okay, realize that people aren't going to see you. Maybe go a bit slower on your bike. Assume that a driver is going to have difficulty seeing you because of the surroundings. I know that we as cyclists assume that we have just as much rights, and we do. But the reality of the situation is they're driving a machine in poor weather, and they can do more damage to us than what we can do to them. So you've got to sort of look out for number one in these situations and make sure that you're aware of the conditions in which you're in, but be aware of your surroundings. Again, prevention's better than cure, as you said. If you can, get off the road, get into bike lanes. They're always better, assuming there's not some obstruction in them. My biggest gripe with bike lanes is that they're not necessarily cleaned as regularly as what a street is. By the street sweepers and what have you. So again, they're a safer option, but you still have to be alert to what's going on in them. Another scenario, particularly in certain suburbs. So if you're in sort of like the inner west areas, for example, where there are very narrow streets and there are a lot of cars, you might only have one route. Car dooring is a real problem. So try to give yourself enough room away from a car just to avoid that situation altogether. Yes, most of the time the person who has opened the car door is going to be at fault. But again, I tell you, you hit that car door at 25 or 30 kilometers an hour, it's really going to muck you up. So even though they're completely still. So again, there's insufficient education around car dooring, I personally think. And so people don't generally know to look out their windows or to check their doors for cyclists when they're opening their doors in those environments. So again, you need to sort of try to be a little bit more alert to these possibilities. To prevention better than cure. A big one in the CBD that I see it every day, and I really, I can't stand it when I see it because I know the severe consequences that happen. Please obey the traffic lights. There is so much traffic in the CBD, and I see cyclists running the red lights all the time and very narrowly escaping collisions. You run the gauntlet, it's never going to be a good outcome. Please, I know that everybody's busy, but just wait the extra minute at the lights. It can really, if you get hit by a car, it is really devastatingly going to change your life. It's very rare that people just bounce and have nothing to do with them. You will go over the bonnet, you will go through the windscreen, you will get thrown down the road. It's bad. So self-preservation, obey the lights, and just save yourself from physical and mental injuries. That's probably, in a nutshell, Peter, that's probably enough examples. I mean, you could go all day on this one.
What we can all do. Just to mention a couple of additional ones though as well, we've got a number of ride leaders and even master ride leaders that have joined us in this webinar tonight. Obviously, route planning is really, really useful. And if you're a member of your local bicycle user group, they do fantastic jobs in terms of planning their rides, ensuring that they've got safe routes in place, and that certainly reduces the element of risk and danger, ensuring that they're riding away from unsafe areas or hazards, riding along shared paths, and obviously riding in groups and taking care of one another in groups. Plenty of other things as well, but certainly those of you that aren't already a member of your local bicycle user group, jump on the Bicycle New South Wales website and certainly sign up to your local bug, because they do a wonderful job in keeping people safe, ensuring they have a great time, particularly if you're a beginner bicycle rider. I know a lot of the bugs run fantastic introductory sort of beginner level rides, so you'll be with familiar people who are learning at the same time, so you can get up and running in a really safe and low risk environment. Moving on, though, to our further discussion, Leigh, why would people get a lawyer?
Look, the CTP scheme is complex, and I know it was set up to actually be quite user-friendly. And if you've got a relatively minor injury, it is. But where things are not going to go your way, and unfortunately with bicycle accidents, a lot of the time it doesn't. Like I said earlier, you can be knocked unconscious. You might have no memory of what the actual event is. You could have conflicting versions from the driver. You might get your treatment denied. There might be, the insurance company might appoint an investigator to interview you. All of this helps having an advocate there to assist you. We do the heavy lifting for you. We advise you. So if you want to ask a question before telling the insurance company something, you can ask us, and we will give you the advice and the impact of doing that. We will always tell you to do the right thing, right? But it does always help so that you know what you are saying to the insurance company is correct. So, we as a law firm get very involved in your rehabilitation. So if things are not going right, we will help you find new treatment providers. We will help you find a new rehabilitation provider. We will do all of the things that are necessary to get you back on your bike. If we can see that you're having issues with your we will have only just met you, but you'd be surprised how quickly a person's demeanor changes psychologically in a very short period of time. And if we notice those things, well, then we might start talking to your spouse, for example, and say, how is he or she going at home? Have you noticed a change in behavior? Do they need support from a psychologist? Go and speak to your doctor about it if they do. Okay, so we're very involved in rehabilitation, and that's not normal for a law firm to do. But because we are heavily involved with the cycling industry and are advocates in this space, believe in rehabilitation and really want to work with the rehabilitation providers to not only get you back on your bike, but to help to get back on with life, right? And through that process, we will then run if we need to, the compensation claim off the back of it for you, right? But we at Advantage Legal are personal injury experts or specialists in personal injury law, more specifically. But we understand the dynamics of cycling. We understand, the particular situations that cyclists get themselves into. We understand the particular dynamics of the injuries. So again, helping you with things that other law firms may not be able to do. So don't worry, just to dispel sort of any myths, you're not going to find us chasing you in the ambulance down to the hospital. You'll have to call us, but we're here if you need us.
Great to clarify that. Always very important. Well, that probably wraps up most of the discussion now. We do have a little bit of time for a few questions, which is always really, really beneficial. One of the questions that a member of one of the bicycle user groups wrote into us during the week was from Wendy, and she was seeking a little bit of clarification on whether a ride leader can be sued if a person in a bicycle user group is injured during a group ride. Do you want to kick off, and I might add a little bit more to that as well, Leigh?
Yeah, look, so Wendy, this was sort of one of those circumstances where I do have to sort of say it's bordering legal advice. So the circumstances of the particular scenario will definitely matter in this situation. However, overall, could a ride leader, if they were negligent in something that they did that led to somebody being injured, theoretically, yes, they could be sued. However, the circumstances of that would be rather remote. So I'm not sitting here saying that every ride leader should be fearful of, ever going on a ride. That's certainly not the case, right? But if a ride leader did something that was overtly negligent and led to an injury of somebody else being injured on that ride, then theoretically, yes, they could. However, again, I just want to really reiterate, it'd be a remote circumstance. It's actually hard to envision what exactly. They'd have to be rather negligent in their planning of a ride or something along those lines, that you go down a dangerous track, or the bikes weren't prepared properly. Like it's a difficult situation to actually give certainty on, but theoretically, yes, it is possible.
Totally agree, Leigh. Thank you for that. I agree. The public liability policy of Bicycle New South Wales would kick in and provide that cover, but only in the case that rider was actually found negligible in their exercising of their duties or their instructions or their responsibilities. So as long as you're doing all the right things and follow the information and advice and learnings in the ride leader manual, for example, that you all know about as a ride leader, the likelihood of those circumstances is extremely, extremely low. But of course, you do have that cover from Bicycle New South Wales should that very, very rare circumstance occur. Another question we had, Leigh, was around illegal e-bikes. Obviously, it's a very, very common topic, and I do need to highlight that certainly from a Bicycle New South Wales insurance coverage, there is the potential, if you are riding a established illegal e-bike, or e-scooter, of course, that you would not be covered in the event of utilising that insurance. It's not guaranteed, but it is certainly a high likelihood. What about the instance where a person was riding an illegal e-bike and was hit by a car, what are the implications in that possible scenario, Leigh? And I understand we might have to take some of these questions on notice and provide further follow-up.
Yeah, look, e-bikes are an interesting situation because the extent of the illegality has to be relevant to the actual how the accident has occurred. So the fact an e-bike is illegal doesn't necessarily mean that that is the cause of the accident. So, but if the illegality of the e-bike was so severe that it amounted to a criminal offence, for example, you may lose coverage under certain things under the C2P legislation. If you make it through to a damages case, and again, depending on the severity of the illegality or how much the illegality of the bike has contributed to the accident, the insurance company may allege contributory negligence. There's a pretty big range. It may have no bearing on the case at all. It just depends on the circumstances. It will largely depend on how the illegality of the bike is actually mentioned to the bike. A lot of the time, the insurance company may not even be aware of it. It may not be a pertinent fact that comes up in the investigation. I haven't actually seen an illegal e-bike case sort of ventilated. I've seen e-bike cases, but I haven't seen an illegal e-bike case ventilated to date in a personal injury setting. I suspect that a lot of people who have illegal e-bikes and ride them don't bring a case because they are under the misconception or potentially the correct conception that it wouldn't be allowed. Until those cases are sort of tested and ventilated a little bit, it is a very new area. I think you'd need to look at those personal circumstances of that case to actually see, what is relevant to the actual entitlement at the time. So that's probably more of a you need to get legal advice question. But generally speaking, I think you'd actually need to look at the circumstances of the case on that one.
Yeah, great. It's good to provide some context around that.
The police, however, may charge you with an offence, and that's what you need to keep in mind. So like you really shouldn't be using the bikes illegally modified in any event. Go and get a motorbike. They're road registerable. If you shouldn't be using an illegally modified e-bike in the first place.
Great. We had another question from Fiona down the far south coast. It's always great to have regional members join us from across the state. And I know down there, and particularly in a number of areas, they do a lot of off-road riding in bush tracks and trails and fire trails, which is absolutely fantastic. And obviously their Bicycle New South Wales insurance coverage provides them cover with that. How does is it the same CTP coverage if there was a vehicle incident on a fire trail and in an off-road circumstance, like a four-wheel drive or
you get into the particular circumstances of the case, but the general rule is a road or road-related area is covered if there is a registerable vehicle involved in the situation. So where it becomes tricky is where they are not registerable or they are, just a private property and things along those lines. So again, it's a very much a situation-based approach to that. There are situations where it will be covered. There are situations where it won't be covered. If you are just by the roadside, like the road itself, riding, but next to the road, it's still classified as the road or road-related area. So you'll get coverage there if a car comes off the road and hits. I've had a number of clients where people have they've been riding on the edge of the road because like along the highways, because the highways they don't want to be riding next to a car that's traveling 110 kilometers an hour. So they'll be riding on the road's edge. Somebody's leant down on a corner to pick up a mobile phone and they've collected them. So again, technically they were off the road, but it's a road or road related area. They're covered because the motor vehicle has caused the collision and it's still there. So country areas are not any, and the coastal regions are not really any different. There are some exceptions for like where you go to the beaches that you can I'm forgetting the name of the beach at the moment, but there are beaches where you can take your, go off-roading and things like that. There are accidents that occur on those. I'm talking about off-road four-wheel driving and things like that. So accidents occur on those. They're still covered under conditional permits. So again, there are exceptions to, well, sorry, not exceptions, but every scenario needs to be taken into consideration. I hope that helps.
Yeah, that's really useful actually. It provides some good context around the likelihood or occasionally not, which might be covered in that road environment, which is really important to know for when people are off road, and there might be an incident that occurs. And obviously Leigh Davidson grew up in regional New South Wales as well, so he's got a good understanding of other places outside of Greater Sydney as well, which is always good to be knowledgeable on. Couple of really quick questions just to get through then. Do we need police report for Bicycle New South Wales insurance access? And the answer to that is yes, it's very helpful, but it's not a compulsory requirement. So that's important to recognise. And another question, Leigh, has come from your police report. In terms of a psychological injury, does that need to be included in a police report if someone was to want to access that down the line?
If you know that there is a psychological injury that has occurred when you are reporting it, yes, but you are not required to go back to the police after you've reported it and update them. You can just go straight to the insurance company for that. Like I said, the psychological injury is a bit of an anomaly because a lot of the time it manifests months, sometimes even years after the accident, and it can be start as something relatively minor, and it can evolve into something quite bad at times. So think of a situation where somebody has an accident. They might need minor surgery following the accident. That surgery doesn't work. They have to go back and have a second operation. You can have infections and things like that follow on. You can end up, amputations. You can have replacement limbs and things like that. It can get nasty. And off the back of that comes a psychological condition. My life has changed. 6 months ago, I had both legs. Now they're gone. All right. Or I've lost a leg or I've lost a hip. Like these things, it happens. As much as what we want to believe that, it's a big world out there and this will never happen to me, it happens to everybody. There are people that you will know somebody in your lifetime that has a serious car accident or a serious workplace accident. It's inevitable. It happens to everybody. So it's best that everybody knows about this kind of stuff. But yeah, psychological injuries in terms of reporting to the police, if you know about it at the time, by all means, please let them know. If the psychological injury is the only injury, you're probably gonna find it hard pressed for the police to take the report. So again, just write down, like we said before, who the police officer was, where you reported it, the time and the date. That'll be sufficient to give to the insurance company to show them that you tried.
Excellent. Always good to know. We do have a few other questions. We're not going to be able to get to all of them, unfortunately, so my apologies, folks. If we have missed your question, please send us an email at info@bicycleNSW.org.au, and we're always happy to help. We've got staff that are actually located out in regional New South Wales who are always keen to help. I'm in Greater Sydney, like some other staff, but I always love getting out there as well and spending time with some of our bugs and members in regional spaces. We want to wrap things up now. We are going to make a recording of this and distribute it to members more widely, probably through one of the membership EDMs. But I do want to sincerely thank our exclusive compensation law partners, Advantage Legal and Leigh Davidson, for making sure that tonight's webinar was put together and delivered with such informative, useful information. So thank you so much, Leigh. I know some of the content we've covered tonight is quite confronting and challenging. But it's, knowledge is power in this situation. So it's important that we're all armed with the right information and awareness so that we can make the right decisions if ourselves or one of our friends or loved ones needs this assistance. So I think it's really, really important and useful content for us to all be aware of. For those of you that aren't members of Bicycle New South Wales, there's probably one or two in the audience. Please, please, please reach out to us. We'd love you to join the family and be part of a wonderful network, not just of Bicycle New South Wales, but to get you involved in the local bicycle user groups as well. So reach out to us and we can tell you more information, info@bicyclenewsouthwales.org.au again, or call the phone number on the website. We also should mention that our wonderful partners at Advantage Legal have a free initial consultation and a 5% discount if you were to engage with their services, which is a really, really useful membership benefit as well. And obviously a specialist in this space as well, which is important to make to highlight. We've, in partnership with Advantage Legal as well, we're also releasing some more resources as well very, very soon, and there'll be more information in the members' emails and other communications. It's all about what to do after a cycling accident, so highly relevant to what we've been talking about tonight. A useful guide and a useful resource for bicycle users to use and register to get the information for. So we'll let you know about that soon. And we've got 2 more fantastic webinars coming up as well this year. Further information on them will be provided. The first one will be on rehabilitation following an accident and a crash to recovery account from an actual former Advantage Legal client. So really, really useful real-world case studies of how the process works and further informative information there as well. But with that, we really, really thank you and appreciate your time. Ride safe, everyone. Thank you for your participation, and particularly thank you to Advantage Legal for all of their wonderful contributions as well. Good evening.
Good evening. Thanks a lot, Peter. Bye, everybody.